and welcome to another episode of Spectacular Magazine Shorts. I'm your host, Skylar Smith. Monday, May 3rd through Sunday, May 9th, PlayMakers Repertory Company is streaming an encore presentation of the world premiere drama, Edges of Time by Jacqueline E. Lawton, in honor of World Press Freedom Day on May 3rd. Jacqueline E. Lawton is a pioneering American playwright who writes with a strong vision for racial and social justice and gender parity. I'm honored to have her as my guest today. Mrs. Lawton, welcome to Spectacular Mag Shorts.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Absolutely. We're very lucky to have you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and when you started writing plays?
Oh, sure. So I'm from Texas. I went to UT Austin for undergrad and grad work, and that's when I started to become a playwright. I've been writing really all my life. I would tell short little stories to entertain my sister. But I really became very passionate about theater because it was, it's the only art form that has, well, pre-COVID and after COVID, live performances, right? So live audiences, exploring the human condition, live performances. And I fell in love with the theater very young. I saw a production of Jack and the Beanstalk, and the harp was so beautiful. She had this beautiful song. Her costumes were beautiful. And that was one of my favorite little fairy tales. So to see it come to life was really magical for me. And then I saw Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods, which of course is an explosion of the fairy tales. And I said, wow, this is what theater can do. It can really tell such powerful stories about what it means to be alive, what it means to survival, on this planet. And I just found like there's a place for me here to tell stories.
Yeah, and alongside that, I know that you're a playwright. Have you ever acted or directed plays as well?
Yes. So I acted mostly in undergrad and like some in grad school. And then when I moved to DC, I did some acting, but my writing is really what took off. And then I've directed occasionally, when called on, when necessary. But I'm also a dramaturg, and a dramaturg is someone who does research around the world of a play, helping the audiences to understand the world of play, helping designers and actors really feel the full context of the play. And then new play development, so helping playwrights write their play, being a soundboard, reading drafts. So I've done that, and I've also been a teaching artist, so teaching theater in the classroom, teaching teachers how to integrate art to the classroom. So I really consider myself a theater artist. I've produced short play festivals as well. So I try to get my hand in, in as many different facets of theater as possible, because I love the genre so much.
Wow, I am so lucky to be with somebody who's so well-rounded in the theater world. I think we'll go ahead and start talking about Edges of Time.
Yeah.
I watched it a couple days ago, and I really enjoyed the story, something that I had never heard about before. It's another one of those hidden figure dramas. So can you tell us a little bit more about the plot? What is it about?
So it's about investigative journalist Marvel Cooke. And prior to researching and learning about her, I had never heard of her, which I thought, how this extraordinary woman, this hidden figure, as you say, and I wanted to make sure that no one could ever say that ever again. Like, I wanted her story to be told because she's so inspiring, she's so powerful. So what we meet Marvel on the morning of the Birmingham bombings that happened, when those 4 young girls were killed. And it was at a time when Marvel was no longer working in newspaper. She was no longer a journalist. She was no longer an editor, because the politics of the time and also race relations at the time, there was no place for her as news moved from papers. And of course, we still get newspapers, but to the television industry. You weren't seeing Black women as broadcast journalists. And so what we see her the morning of the Birmingham bombing, she sees what happens, and she sees the story that's being told, and it's not told in the way that she would tell it, which is centering on those 4 young girls, on their families, on the race relations on the ground. And she's someone who has to get the truth out. She has to let the people understand what's at stake here if we don't tell the truth of what's happening. And so that's what we see. She's in her home, and she's wrestling with the fact that there's no room for her in the newspaper industry anymore, but her voice is vital and essential. And so she's wrestling with, what does she do? How does she make sure the story is told in the way it should be told from her perspective? And so that's the play. is we get to learn more about her upbringing, her career, her long, illustrious career, working with Black newspapers, working with communist newspapers, progressive newspapers, really. And we get to explore what it's like to be a journalist, what it's like to fight to tell the story the way you know it will resonate with the community and make change happen. And she's also fascinating in that because she was a communist during the Red Scare, as it were, she was called before the McCarthy hearings. And she is this bold, brazen woman who was not going to be taken down. And it's fascinating to read the transcripts from that testimony. So we get a little bit of that narrative woven into the play as well.
Absolutely. And why do you feel that bringing Marvel Cooke's story is important right now in the time that we're in currently?
Yeah, well, when I started writing it, I was very aware of the attack on journalism, the attack on the Fourth Estate. And I really have great value in journalism, particularly investigative journalists, because I feel the role of the journalist is to call attention to and hold accountable the actions and inactions of people in positions of power. And we rely on our journalists to bring those stories to us. And it was just, I couldn't stand to have the attack happen because what you're hearing you don't happen to like. Like, that's not, positive coverage is not the only thing a politician or a leader should expect. They should expect criticism because those people in positions of power are serving their community. And when they're not doing that, they need to be called out for it. And I just felt like I wanted to address that. And I was able to do that through Marvel's story because of the circumstances she faced at the time period, because of the Red Scare, because of McCarthyism. Progressive journalism was not something that people were wanting to hear because it was disrupting this narrative of America that was wanting to be put forward. So there's a repeat of that, right? We're seeing more and more of that, and it felt very relevant to tell.
For sure. And speaking of McCarthyism, do you think that there is any modern day McCarthyism that is going on at this current time, either just in the African American community or in other BIPOC communities as well?
Well, I see it not from the particular point of view of race, but I see McCarthyism in terms of belief. So what we see with McCarthyism is that there's a belief system that goes against, that's counter to the dominant narrative. And so at the time, the fear of communism being this thing that was going to take over the US is that it went against Christianity. It went against this American patriotism kind of worldview. And so that was the fear. So that's why it was being pushed out and stomped down. So at the time, the USSR, now Russia, was communist power. China was a communist power. Cuba was forming a communist power. And so that was a real fear to the American idealism. And I see that in progressive politics. I see the fear of socialism, even though we are a nation who was founded on government supporting its people, having resources there for people who are impoverished, who are marginalized. And that does fall under a racial barrier, although when you look at the largest recipients of Social Security are white folks, the narrative is that it's Black and brown folks. And so there's a fear about socialism taking over and uprooting capitalism. That's not going to happen. We're a nation founded on capitalism, and that's every revolution has reset to capitalism. So there's got a stronghold in this nation. So I don't see it from a racialized point of view until you start to think, okay, who are the people we're told are using social services as a burden to society, when in fact it's just not true. So I see that happening in answer to your question.
That's very insightful. Thank you for that wonderful answer. I'm going to kind of push it back to some of your other work. Is there any other work that you'd like to mention, either previously or things that you're working on now after Edges of Time?
Oh, that's lovely. So I'll tell you about two recent projects. I have a play called So Goes We, which I received the Institute for African and African American Research Faculty Fellowship to write that play. And it's looking at the impact of racism on the immigration movement. And I started writing that also during the last administration as we started to see Haitian refugees being targeted and this idea of sending Haitian refugees back to Haiti. At the time, Haiti was going through a lot of political upheaval. They really had not rebuilt from the hurricane. And so there's a lot of fear in the Haitian community. But I wasn't hearing the story being talked about. And I felt like we need to tell that story. And so I wrote a play. It's called So Goes We. It looks at immigration lawyers and what's happening as lawyers are trying to help their clients as the laws are changing constantly every single day. And then we follow a scholar, a Haitian scholar who's traveling to the United States. Another recent play is called 19, which was written, of course, in celebration of the 19th Amendment passing. And this was a commission from the Women's Theater Festival and the North Carolina League of Women Voters. And they wanted to commemorate the passage of the 19th Amendment, but they wanted to tell the true story of what was happening on the ground. And so what 19 talks about is how during the time, there was a fear of giving women the right to vote because they were afraid that then Black people would get the right to vote. And then Black men would get the right to vote, and they would then be held in positions of power. And there was a lot of fear. And so what you saw on the ground was white women working against themselves and each other to prevent Black women from getting the right to vote. So that's a harsh reality that is not spoken about a lot. And the League of Women Voters were like, we have to tell that story. And so that's a play that I wrote. It's an hour-long play. And the idea of that is when we produce the play, the second hour will be registering people to vote, sharing information about voting rights, and then having real conversations on the ground in each community about the issues that matter to them. And a project I'm going to be working on next, which has not been announced, so maybe I should mention it, but it's with a theater company in Athens, Ohio called Tantrum Theater Company. So I'll soon be able to talk more about it, but I'm really excited because I'll be working with that community to tell stories of, unsung heroes, hidden voices within the Black community there.
Well, you've got a lot on your plate coming up soon, but we are so excited to see more from you. Can you tell us a little bit about how people can watch Edges of Time?
Yes, so it's going to be streaming from May 3rd to May 9th. If you go to the PlayMakers website, which I know will be embedded, so you'll have the link to it, but you'll be able to watch it there on your devices, and it's going to be really fun. And what's cool is that when we were rehearsing it, I was actually at home, because of COVID protocols. There were a limited number of people who could actually be in the rehearsal room. And that's very different than traditional times. Like usually I'd be at the room and be there very nervously and anxiously and happily as the playwright. But this time I watched everything through Zoom. So I actually got to watch the film in the exact way audiences will be watching it, or watch the play in the exact way the audiences will be watching it. And that was pretty fun because I felt that I could be of really great service to the audience to be able to give notes from that perspective. So you'll be able to watch it through streaming, laptop, if you want to cast it onto your television, which is how I watched it, which was kind of amazing, or your phone, you'll have access to it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ms. Lawton, for taking the time to speak with me today. I have been talking to playwright Jacqueline E. Lawton, whose play Edges of Time will have a streaming encore presentation Monday, May 3rd through Sunday, May 9th at PlayMakers Repertory Company. I'm Skylar Smith, and you've been watching Spectacular Mag Shorts. Until next time, bye-bye.
Spectacular Magazine. We on the scene.